Ethan Gray sat behind his large glass desk, staring at the message glowing on his phone screen. His hand tightened around the device, as if he could crush the words away. Of course, it had to be a grand event, one covered by every business magazine in New York. He could already imagine the smiles, the whispers, the reporters asking how he felt about seeing her again. Ethan was not a man who liked losing control. He ran Greystone Industries, one of the biggest tech companies in the city. People said he had everything: success, money, power, but not one of them noticed the heavy silence that followed him home each night. That silence was worse now, louder since he received the invitation, and the thought of walking into that party alone made it unbearable. He spun his pen slowly between his fingers while his assistant, Nora, walked in holding a folder. She placed it on his desk, raising an eyebrow when she saw his troubled look. "Another merger to crush?" she asked lightly. He shook his head and turned the phone toward her. Nora read the message, and the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. "The X. This explains the storm clouds above your head." "I'm not going," he said flatly, leaning back. "Right," she replied, tapping the desk. "Except if you don't show up, people will think you care. And if you do show up alone, they'll still think you care. So maybe you need a distraction." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "A distraction? A date? Someone fun, fresh, and completely different from your usual crowd?" He almost smiled at her boldness. The idea was ridiculous. Yet as the day dragged on, it stuck to his mind like a stubborn tune. "Watch where you're going, mister," she said, her voice full of frustration. Ethan looked at his soaked sleeve and then at her stubborn face. Strands of hair escaped her ponytail, her eyes bright with irritation and something else: honesty. She was the first person in a long time who didn't seem nervous around him. "You dropped those on me," he said calmly. "You walked into me," she shot back. "And I just lost half my order." He sighed and knelt to help her pick up the scattered stems. Her name tag read Lily Carter, owner of a small flower shop 2 blocks away. While they cleaned up the mess, she talked non-stop about big companies crushing small businesses. Ethan kept quiet, oddly entertained. By the time they stood, his suit was ruined, but her fire had made him forget the cold. 2 days later, the thought returned while he stared at the event's reminder on his calendar. A fake date. Someone real, lively, and impossible to ignore. Someone like her. Without giving himself time to doubt, he called her shop. When Lily answered, her tone was half curious, half suspicious. "You?" "If it's about buying more flowers, my answer is yes." Lily hesitated. Something in his voice must have convinced her it wasn't just vanity pushing him. No pretending off the dance floor, no weird romantic lines, and no photo spreads. "That's acceptable," he answered. When he hung up, Ethan leaned back, a rare spark of amusement curving his mouth. He never made impulsive decisions. Yet this one felt oddly right. Somewhere inside, a quiet voice told him this woman might prove to be far more than a distraction. Across town, Lily Carter stared at her phone in disbelief. The richest, coldest man she had ever met had just asked her to be his date. She laughed again, shaking her head. But deep down, curiosity nudged her. Maybe she would show this man what real charm looked like. Not the kind money could buy, but the kind that came from being alive, imperfect and unafraid. The deal was set, and neither of them knew it, but the night ahead would change everything. Ethan arrived at Lily's flower shop the next morning looking far less like a CEO and more like a man who regretted every hasty decision. The smell of fresh roses and jasmine filled the small room. Buckets of color surrounded him, and sunlight danced through the dusty front window. Lily was trimming stems behind the counter, wearing an old green apron and humming to herself as if work was her favorite song. When she saw him, her eyes widened with amusement. "Mr. Serious in a flower shop again? I thought you avoided places that don't have marble floors." Ethan looked down at his tailored suit and then back at the scattered petals on the floor. "I wanted to finalize the plan," he said, sounding like he was preparing for a board meeting. "Plan," she repeated, tying a new ribbon around a bouquet. "You mean our fake relationship for one night?" "Yes. The gala is in 5 days. We should discuss how to convince people." She placed the flowers in a vase and studied him carefully. "Convince them or convince yourself?" she asked lightly. He frowned, unused to being teased. "Lily, it's important that we appear believable. You can't walk in laughing about how fake it all is." She gave a long sigh and leaned on the counter. "Lax, boss man, I'll follow your lead." "What exactly do I need to learn?" That afternoon he began what he called practice sessions. He booked a quiet restaurant after closing hours so no one would interrupt. Lily arrived wearing a simple red dress, her hair tied carelessly. She looked like sunshine that refused to behave. Ethan stood up to greet her, trying to appear calm. "So," Lily said, taking her seat, "teach me how to be your perfect fake girlfriend?" He explained proper greetings, hand placement, tone of voice, and even posture. He demonstrated how to walk across the room with confidence, expecting her to copy him. Halfway through his instructions, Lily let out a laugh. "That's not walking. That's marching into battle," she said. "This is how you maintain composure in front of executives." She crossed her arms. "Maybe try smiling instead of staring like you want to by everyone in the room." For a second, Ethan didn't know whether to feel offended or entertained. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. A small, real one that surprised both of them. "Better," Lily said with approval. "You look human now." They spent hours going through social situations. She asked endless questions, most of them playful. He tried to stay serious, but soon he found himself laughing quietly at her jokes. When she described how she once delivered a bouquet to the wrong address and ended up staying for dinner with a confused old lady, he almost forgot he was supposed to be teaching. Their lessons continued each day. They had lunch together, practiced small talk, and even staged fake introductions with Nora's help at the company office. Nora watched them with raised eyebrows and a knowing smile. Lily never seemed nervous around Ethan, and that unsettled him. Everyone usually treated him with respect mixed with fear. Lily treated him like he was just another neighbor who needed more sunlight. During one of their meetings, Lily suddenly asked, "What happened between you and your ex?" Ethan stayed quiet for a moment. He rarely spoke about it. "We were engaged," he finally said. "She decided I cared more about my company than about her." Lily nodded slowly. "And did you?" He didn't answer right away. "Maybe I did, but I believed I was building something important." "She probably wanted you to build something else," Lily said softly, "something with a heartbeat." That night, when Ethan returned to his quiet apartment, her words echoed in his mind. For the first time, he wondered if success without warmth meant anything at all. The following day, he invited Lily to his office to choose her dress for the gala. Designers and assistants filled the room with fabrics and colors. Lily looked overwhelmed, but kept grinning as they held up gown after gown. "Too shiny," she said to one. "Too tight to another. Too serious to a third." Finally, she stepped into a simple silver dress that caught the light like water. The room went silent. Ethan stared, unsure whether to speak. Lily noticed his expression and tilted her head. "It fits, doesn't it?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Perfectly." When she stepped out to change, Nora leaned toward him. "You know, this is supposed to be pretend, right?" He gave a short nod, pretending he didn't hear the question. By the time the final day arrived, they both knew their act needed no more practice. They could laugh naturally, walk side by side, without forcing a rhythm. But something deeper had formed beneath the act, something neither wanted to name. As Lily arranged the bouquet she planned to bring as a thank-you gift for the gala's host, she caught herself smiling. The night ahead would be filled with glitter, music, and play acting. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something real had already begun hiding beneath all the pretending. And somewhere across the city, Ethan sat by his window, thinking not about business deals or appearances, but about a bright-eyed florist who had somehow turned lessons in pretending into lessons about being alive. The night of the gala arrived with silver lights glittering across the city. Cars waited in long lines outside the Grand Meridian Hotel, while music drifted from the open doors. Inside, crystal chandeliers shone above polished floors, and every guest looked ready for a magazine cover. Ethan stood near the entrance, fixing his tie and reminding himself to appear calm. His heart, however, was nowhere near calm. When Lily stepped out of the car, the noise around him faded. The simple silver gown she had chosen now looked like a ripple of soft light. Her hair framed her face, and her smile carried the same warmth he remembered from her flower shop. She walked toward him, completely steady, like she had been attending events like this all her life. "Clean up nicely, Mr. Sirius," she said, glancing at his suit. Whoa. "I was born ready for a little adventure," she said, looping her arm through his. He led her into the crowded hall, his chin high, his mind sharp. Cameras flashed, people whispered, and heads turned as they passed. Lily greeted everyone with a natural ease that dissolved the chill usually hanging around such events. She laughed kindly when introduced to investors, thanked the waiters by name, and somehow began a lively conversation about flowers with one of the most feared reporters in the city. Ethan watched, amazed. Normally, he controlled the rhythm of every room he entered. Tonight, the rhythm followed her. After a short speech on the stage, his ex-fiancée, Clara, spotted them and made her way through the crowd. She looked perfect, glowing under the lights, her hand resting on the arm of her new boyfriend. "A rival CEO named Patrick Lane," Ethan, Clara said, smiling too sweetly. "It's been too long." Her eyes shifted toward Lily. Lily gave her an easy smile. "I'm Lily Carter. I'm just here to make sure he and T spend the whole night checking stock prices." Patrick laughed. Ethan caught the quick flicker of frustration in her expression. Later, during dinner, Lily whispered, "I think your ex is trying to set the room on fire with her eyes." "Good," Ethan said quietly. "Means our plan is working." Lily frowned slightly. "Your plan might be, but I'm here to enjoy the evening, not burn bridges." She was not pretending nearly as much as she was being herself, and somehow that made everything she did more convincing. Soon the music began, and couples moved to the dance floor. Ethan hesitated. He hadn't danced since Clara left him. Lily noticed his uncertainty and reached for his hand. "Come on," she said, laughing. "It's part of the job." He let her lead him onto the floor. They moved awkwardly at first. Ethan's steps were too stiff, hers too playful. But gradually, something shifted. She guided him, and he followed her rhythm instead of controlling it. For a man used to winning, it felt strange to surrender, yet strangely freeing. When she looked up and their eyes met, the noise around them faded again. When the song ended, applause filled the hall. Someone called out her name, asking who she was. Cameras flashed, and for a moment Lily looked surprised. She had not come to steal the spotlight, but it had found her anyway. As they stepped aside, Clara approached again, pretending to smile. "You certainly know how to choose your company," she said. "Though I must say, this relationship seems to have appeared out of thin air," Lily replied calmly. "Sometimes good things do." Ethan wanted to laugh, but simply placed a protective hand at Lily's back, guiding her away. Hours passed, and soon the countdown to midnight began. Everyone turned toward the stage where golden clocks displayed the seconds. 10, 9, 8, the crowd joined in unison. Ethan and Lily stood near the balcony doors, away from the flashes and questions. When the final number came, fireworks burst outside, painting the sky in red and gold. Lily stepped out onto the balcony, breathing in the cold air. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "The city always looks alive when the year changes." Ethan joined her, his coat brushing her shoulder. "You made this night different," he said before he could stop himself. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "You made this night expensive, brought the fun." He smiled, the quiet kind that carried truth beneath it. For a moment they stood in silence, watching the bright sky. Inside, Clara's laughter echoed faintly, mixed with music and toasts. Outside, the noise faded, leaving only the whisper of wind and distant cheers. He seemed gentler, the sharpness in his voice replaced by thoughtfulness. The days after the gala moved slower than normal. Ethan returned to his office, but the usual sense of victory he felt after any public success was missing. His meetings felt dull, his thoughts distracted. People talked about how stunning his date had been, calling her charming and unforgettable. Every magazine printed photos of them smiling on the dance floor. Yet the only thing Ethan could think about was not the attention, but the way Lily had looked at him when the fireworks lit the sky. Lily, on the other hand, had gone back to her flower shop. She arranged roses and lilies for her customers, humming softly, pretending she was not still thinking about him. But her mind betrayed her. She remembered how gentle his hand had felt on her back, how his serious eyes had softened when he smiled. She had accepted that night as a job, something brief and simple. Still, she could not deny that somewhere along the way, she had wanted it to be more. A week passed before Ethan decided to see her again. He told himself it was only to say thank you for saving his image, nothing more. But when he walked into her shop, the words he had prepared disappeared. Lily looked up from arranging a bunch of sunflowers. "Back again already, Mr. Serious? Lost without my acting lessons?" Laughed, though the sound came out awkward. "I owe you dinner. You turned a disaster into success." She placed the flowers down and crossed her arms. "It was fun, I'll admit, but you don't have to feed me to say thank you. Maybe I want to," he said quietly. For a brief moment, they just stood there, letting the silence speak. Then she agreed, partly curious, partly nervous. They met that evening at a small restaurant far from his usual settings. There were no photographers, no fancy dishes, only candlelight and warm bread. Lily spoke about her shop, how she dreamed of expanding it one day into a garden cafe. Ethan listened with genuine interest, asking questions he never would have asked before. The man who used to analyze every conversation now felt comfortable just hearing her speak. She, in turn, asked nothing about his profits or his company. She wanted to know about the books he liked, the food he missed from childhood, the things that made him happy outside his office walls. By the time they finished dinner, Ethan felt strangely light. The city noise faded behind them as they walked down the quiet street. He wanted to reach for her hand but stopped himself. Something deep inside warned him that crossing that line would change everything. A few days later, news about the gala began to fade, replaced by other stories. Still, Clara had not moved on quietly. During a charity event, she made sure to mention in front of reporters that Ethan's charming date had been hired to play the part. The gossip spread quickly, twisting facts into scandal. When Lily heard about it from a customer, her cheerful mood broke. She shut her shop for the day and sat alone, staring at the empty counter. So that was what people now thought, that she was a prop, paid to play the loving date. It hurt her more than she expected. Ethan found out about the rumors an hour later. His chest tightened with anger. He called several contacts to stop the stories, but the whisper had already spread across social networks. He rushed to Lily's shop, where he found her cleaning up in silence. She didn't look up when he entered. "So was this your plan all along? Make your ex jealous and let the city laugh at me?" "Well, no," he said quickly. "I never said anything to anyone." "But you didn't stop it either," she replied. Her voice shook. You used me to prove something to her. I was foolish to think it was ever more than that. Ethan took a step closer, regret written on his face. It stopped being fake for me a long time ago. Should have protected you better. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. It doesn't matter now. Go back to your shiny world. I'll stay in mine. When he left, the weight in his chest felt heavier than any deal gone wrong. He sat in his car outside her shop for a long time, staring at the window display she had made for the new season. It was full of white roses, symbols of new beginnings. But right now, all he felt was loss. Back inside, Lily tried to focus on work, but her hands trembled whenever she touched the flowers. She told herself that feelings had no place between people from such different worlds. Yet when she closed her eyes, she saw his smile, not the polished one for cameras, but the small, real one he gave when she made him laugh. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He replayed her words again and again, knowing they were true. He had spent years mastering the world of power, but not once had he learned how to keep something real. For the first time in a long time, he wanted to fix something not for profit or pride, but because it mattered to his heart. Far from glamour, the two of them lay awake in different corners of the city, both pretending not to care, both failing miserably. And though they didn't know it yet, their story was far from over. The next morning, the city looked washed clean by a light winter rain. Ethan stood by his window holding a cup of black coffee that had already gone cold. Sleep had not come to him. He had run numbers, made calls, threatened newspaper editors, but nothing changed the truth that mattered most. He had hurt the only person who had treated him like more than a suit and a last name. Every part of him wanted to make things right, no matter how foolish he might look doing it. By noon, he was in his office again, but this time there was no sense of business in his movements. Nora stepped inside with a stack of papers and watched his distracted face. You are about to make some grand move again, aren't you? She asked softly. Yes, he said. And this one has nothing to do with work. She smiled faintly. Good. It's about time you started working on yourself. Ethan left before she could say more. He stopped by a bakery Lily liked and bought a small white box filled with her favorite cinnamon rolls. Then he went to her flower shop with the box in one hand and hope in the other. The bell above the door chimed when he entered. Lily was behind the counter, tying ribbons on fresh bouquets for a wedding order. Her expression froze the moment she saw him. She opened her mouth to speak, then looked away. I came to apologize, he began, placing the box carefully on the counter. I should have stood up for you sooner. I made mistakes. I told you before, I don't need your money or your grand gestures, she said quietly, but her hands trembled on the ribbon. This isn't about money, he said. You were real with me when everyone else acted polite. I thought I could keep the line clear between business and my heart, but I was wrong. She looked at him then, uncertain if she should believe him. Words are easy, she said. You can make a contract sound like a promise and people sign without knowing what they lose. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. This isn't a contract. It's a letter I wrote before coming here. It says that I will donate a part of my company's profits to small local shops. I want to start with yours, not because you need it, but because you deserve someone to believe in you. Lily stared at him in silence. The air smelled of jasmine and coffee from the bakery box. For a moment they both stood still, the world outside forgotten. Finally she said, You really don't quit, do you? Not when something matters, he replied. She took off her work gloves slowly. You don't owe me anything, Ethan. But thank you for the thought. I do owe you something, he said. That night at the gala, you showed me what it means to actually see people, not just use them to reach a goal. I can't forget that. I don't want to. A quiet pause followed. The rain started again outside, tapping lightly on the window. Lily sighed and moved around the counter. Maybe we both made mistakes, she said. Maybe I expected too much from a deal that was never meant to turn into more. He looked at her earnestly. I want it to be more. No deals this time. No pretending. Just me showing up. Probably saying the wrong things, and maybe buying too many flowers. For the first time in weeks, Lily laughed. The sound was soft, but full of relief. You would ruin half these plants trying to impress me. I'm willing to risk that, he said. She shook her head, but her eyes were warm now. Fine. But if you ever make the front page again, it better be for something good. I'll aim for it, he said with a small smile. They shared the cinnamon rolls in the back room of the shop while rain kept falling. They talked about small things, nothing to do with money or parties. Ethan listened more than he spoke, watching how she tucked loose strands of hair behind her ear, how carefully she handled even the smallest flower. When the rain stopped, he offered to help carry a few pots outside. As the sky cleared, sunlight broke through the clouds, shining over the street. Lily looked at him and said, "Maybe every bad story can still have a better ending if people are brave enough to change it." "Then let's write ours better," he said. He left later that day, not with promises or contracts, but with a quiet warmth he had never felt before. When she waved goodbye, he noticed that the air around him seemed lighter. Weeks passed, and true to his word, Ethan began supporting local businesses through his company. Reporters found news stories to write that had nothing to do with rumors, and every evening he visited the flower shop, sometimes to help, sometimes just to sit and talk. The man who once lived by numbers now learned the language of emotions. And the woman who once swore she would not fall for a man like him began to believe in second chances. Together, they turned something false into something true. By the next New Year, they stood once again under the city lights, not as a fake pair, but as two people who had found courage in each other. The night sky blazed with fireworks, and when Ethan reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. The world moved on, but for them, that moment was enough to feel certain that this time, the story was real.